congratulations on Drift being part of this year's PAX Indie Showcase.
Yeah, very exciting.
So, Jace, tell us a little bit about Drift, because I've just read about this game and it sounds absolutely amazing. So tell us a little bit about the game itself.
Oh, thank you. So Drift is a car racing tabletop game for 2 to 4 players. And where most board games about car racing sort of abstract the idea of movement around the track, Drift is more about learning to actually properly drive a car around the track. So it uses a uniquely shaped set of tiles. I've called them trajectiles. And the tiles interlock with each other in such a way that the longer the tile you place, the less it's able to pivot in the previous tile play. And so what that means is that the longer the tile you place, so the faster your car is moving along the track, the less control you have over your steering ability, just like a real car. And so players have to make decisions about how best to drive their car around the track and try to hit the apex and be slow into a turn and fast out, just like a real race car.
Wow, so where did the idea originally come from for you?
So I have been a lover of racing games, both tabletop games and video games, and really wanted to set up to play a game that I thought I would enjoy. The idea for the tile shapes actually hit me. I was working as a draftsman for a steel framing company and was designing a roof. And there was just a couple of shapes in the roof that sort of stood out to me. And it was just one of those, epiphany moments. And I kind of, saved the shapes away to a different file. And then on my lunch break started playing around with them and working out. My original idea was that this would be a bit of a toy where kids could sort of play with their own Hot Wheels cars and turn it into a game. And it just kind of evolved from there.
So the game has already won an award. It won the Tabletop Game Designers of Australia's Prototype of the Year award in 2019. How long did it actually take for you to get from the original idea in your head to the point where you were winning awards for the prototype?
So believe it or not, I actually started work on Drift back in, it came up on my Facebook the other day. I believe it was 2013 was the very first time it ever hit the table. I actually worked on it a bit before that, just on a computer. So I'm a graphic designer by trade and was able to sort of build all the shapes and everything that I needed in Adobe Illustrator and play it virtually on the computer and work at what shapes I needed. And then it was actually a bit of a struggle at first. I needed some pretty unique shapes cut out, and I tried several different ways to cut them. Eventually, I got them laser cut. A company down in Sydney did it for me. And the prototypes just kind of evolved from there. There's been a few changes. The core mechanism of the game really hasn't changed a whole lot since 2013. There's been some minor adjustments to the shapes, but it's just really been play testing and tweaking the rules and getting it to a point where it's really fun.
You mentioned that the original idea came about because of your love for gaming and your love for car racing gaming. Tell us a little bit about where that love for gaming came from. Were you someone that was into games from the time you were a child?
Yeah, very much so. And let's be clear, I'm still very much a child. I often say I'm a 12-year-old child. I get my love of cars from my dad. He was a huge racing fan and used to take me out to racetracks. As you can tell from my accent, I'm originally from Toronto, Canada. And he used to take me out to the Molson Indy, which is the Formula One race that takes place in Toronto every year. And my love of video games, I think, is where it all started. I think my first computer was a Commodore VIC-20, and I've loved them ever since then. And I've always had with my love of racing games from my dad and video games, it was just a natural match. Board games is something I really only got into, I'm going to say about 16 years ago. There was a bit of a resurgence in board games that was taking place. A lot of Euro games were coming over from Germany and places like that, and I kind of got onto that train. I have played around with board games ever since I was little, but the real enthusiasm for board games didn't start till then.
What were the actual games that got you into gaming? We've been asking all the developers that. What were the games that you remember that made you fall in love with gaming?
I'm going to put on the way back hat here. There was a game for my Commodore VIC-20 called Gorth, which I believe was an arcade game that sort of got ported over to the computer, and I can remember just playing that for hours and hours on end. In terms of racing video games and as they relate to the game Drift, I would say the Need for Speed series
Yep.
takes a lot of inspiration from those games, where it's got an arcadey feel, and with a bit of a simulation feel to it. Drift takes a lot of its inspiration from those games.
And now I have to ask, because I'm a huge film lover, the Need for Speed film, did it work or didn't it work?
I loved it, but I'm probably the wrong guy to ask. I can't say whether it was a good film or not, but I really enjoyed it.
Yep, I'm the same. I've always thought that game has been unfairly compared to Fast and Furious and stuff like that, because I thought it actually matched kind of what you expected from the game.
Yeah, and it was nice to see, Jesse Pinkman not being a low-life drug dealer for a while.
Exactly. Well, mate, where to now for Drift? Of course, you're part of the Indie Showcase, so what can people expect to see from Drift at the Indie Showcase this year?
As you can imagine, COVID put a bit of a spin on things as far as being able to play test the game live with people. But the silver lining of that is I've actually worked to develop an online implementation of the game using a platform called Tabletop Simulator, which I suspect all of the tabletop games as part of the Indie Showcase will be using. So that will be available for people who have access to Tabletop Simulator to play. In fact, it's available right now. And I, of course, will be running demos all weekend. I know Tuesday night I'm recording for a panel discussion about indie game development and specifically tabletop game development. That's going to be the bulk of my weekend. We'll be demoing that game for people. Although, as I say, the prototype is available online for people to check out anytime.
And how important is PAX to you for the development of Drift as well?
Look, PAX has been a great platform. PAX has an event every year called the Collaboratory, which is in their tabletop section, which is indie game designers showing off their games and getting feedback and exposure. Drift has been a part of that Collaboratory for the last, I believe, 3 years. So last year was strictly online, but the previous 2 years were in person and in Melbourne. Obviously, the exposure from being part of the Indie Showcase is a huge benefit. Unfortunately, at the moment, tabletop games and independent publishing of games has taken a bit of a hit. As you may have heard, international shipping at the moment is just through the roof cost-wise. And there are also shortages of gray board, which is a type of cardboard that's commonly used in board game production. So Drift is in a bit of a holding pattern at the moment. I've had publishers that have taken an interest. However, during COVID, they've sort of had to shift their focus to things like party games and games that people can play with their family. Not that Drift can't be played with your family, but more of those family-oriented games are the focus at the moment. However, I'm hoping with things opening up that's going to change early next year, and hopefully Drift can find a publisher.
Definitely. And James, if people can't make it to PAX Online for some reason, where can they find more information about Drift as well?
So if they're tabletop enthusiasts, they're probably already have a website called BoardGameGeek.com. And BoardGameGeek.com is a huge database of all kinds of board games online. And if they do a search for Drift on there, I believe it's the first one that comes up on there. Or I'm happy for them to email me directly at james@rktscience.net if they'd like some more information about the game.
Awesome. And we'll put those links up online as well. So if you're listening to this interview on the podcast, the links will be directly below where you found the podcast. And if you're listening on air at the moment, the links will be on our website, subcultureentertainment.com. James, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us today. It's been an absolute privilege chatting to you, and we can't wait to see where Drift ends up.
Well, thank you so much. And yeah, again, thank you for taking an interest, and I'll hope to get to talk to some of your listeners at PAX.